Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and we're going to look at Expedition 33 in this video. Despite what some people think, having a French name doesn't mean I speak French, so I can't pronounce it, but the full name of this game is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. Sorry, French people. This is what people are calling a JRPG, despite it being made by a French development studio. I get it, because it's more or less a JRPG. But let's not get bogged down in who's Japanese, who's French, and who can't pronounce their own name. The important thing here is that this is a turn-based RPG that feels, well, let me summarize it in the easiest way I can, but also in the least comprehensible way imaginable. Final Fantasy XIII is a game that exists. Lost Odyssey is a game that deserves the title of Final Fantasy XIII. Final Fantasy XV exists. Expedition 33 is arguably the game that deserves that title. If that confused you, what I'm saying is that Lost Odyssey and Expedition 33 both feel like they could be mainline Final Fantasy games. Back in the day, that kind of meant quite a lot, but these days, the Final Fantasy brand has diminished somewhat in prestige, shall we say. In other words, if these games were called Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy XV, nobody would really bat an eye if you changed the title like that. It's also depressing because Square seems to think there's no interest, no market, just no place for turn-based games, and now we have potentially 2 turn-based games winning consecutive Game of the Year. Not saying Expedition 33 will, but it could. Maybe it should. Actually, did Baldur's Gate come out last year? I genuinely don't even remember. Time is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so. At any rate, there is clearly a market for turn-based games. Baldur's Gate 3 was insanely popular. Expedition 33 hasn't yet reached the same level of penetration, but it's very well received so far. And this is the title I've been super interested in since they announced it, back whenever that was. The art style, the story, the setting, it was all really appealing to me. The soundtrack was fantastic, and they knew, they uploaded some of the soundtrack onto YouTube like immediately, way before the game was out. Now that the game is here, how is it? Well, it's cool. E33 is a turn-based game with a user interface experience, kind of like Persona. I think it's fair to say it's taken inspiration from Persona and many other popular JRPGs. Whilst I said the game's turn-based, it has dodging and parry mechanics that are real-time. The parries are pretty strict with their timing actually, but you are rewarded for these parries with crazy damage. Dodges are a lot more forgiving. Like, again, for example, if parries are 10 frames, dodges feel like 20 frames. There's also a jump, which is pretty forgiving. Characters have health, but in place of mana, they have their own unique resources per character, as well as action points. AP is kind of like how mana works in most games. It's built by attacking, dodging, and parrying, spent on skills and spells. As it's built in battle, it means you don't need to sort of worry about replenishing it, between checkpoints. You can also spend AP on a gun, like Persona. Yeah, you just pull out a gun and shoot them. Outside of that, but related to the combat, character growth is handled by leveling up and assigning stats, but you also unlock skills. For example, Mael could be focused on fire or physical damage. Beyond this, you find pictos in the world, which can be equipped to characters. Think of these as accessories or materia. They give stat boosts, but they also give you little boosts and buffs and passive effects. Once you've used a picto a few times in battle, you'll unlock the passive effect for it, which you can equip it even if you don't have the picto equipped, called Lumina, which operates on a point-based resource system. Say you have a picto which, I don't know, when you equip it, automatically heals you if you hit 50% health, as a random example. Once you've mastered the picto, you can unequip the picto, but just equip the automatic heal thing, which costs maybe 10 Lumina points, and maybe you have 20 total. You can increase that total by finding items out in the world and by leveling up. That's the basics of the combat, the character growth at any rate. It's suitably easy to get into, and if you've played Dark Souls or anything like that, they have a similar kind of scaling system where different weapons scale with different stats. For example, one sword might scale with the health stat and the defense stat, whereas the other weapon might scale more with agility and luck. And they operate on a letter-based scaling system, like S scaling is of course what you would want. In general though, I don't know how important the stats are. Like, I don't know, if you put every single point into the health stat, of course you're going to have a lot more health, but in general, it feels like it's not going to mess up your game. It makes a difference, but it's not going to be a game changer. I think. I could be wrong there, though. It has room for customization in how you build your characters and your team. For example, I've been going into agility and luck for pretty much everyone because speed and crits. And I'm really liking a kind of like a burn-based team where you just keep stacking burn on the enemy, which is a damage over time, and the more stacks you have, the more damage they take, because something about damage over time is really, really fun. I mean, if you saw my Remnant 2 videos, you know I love playing the Ritualist. Just put 1,000,000 damage over times on the enemy, just watch them melt. It's hilarious. And of course, enemies do have weaknesses to different elements and ailments. And the standard ones you would expect are there, and each character's resource system is fairly thought out, but not insanely in-depth. For example, Mael has a stance system where she goes from one stance to the other. One stance might boost your offense, the other might boost your defense. The mage character has a kind of system where using spells grants her one resource, which then is spent by another spell to make that one stronger. For example, you can power up your lightning spells by consuming your fire stains, I think they're called. The story is a simple concept starting out, which is good. In this world, there exists a paintress. Every year, she paints a new number, and everyone above that number dies. It's not a random number, it's a countdown, you know, it's like 34, 33, and so on. At the start of the game, she replaces the number 34 with the number 33, which I think, if I understand that correctly, means everyone who is 34 is now dead. We get to witness this with the gommage. And then it's onto the expedition, setting out on a quest to defeat the paintress. What a great concept for a story. It immediately is easy to understand, it sets up a lot of questions and themes, and it hooks you in with a cool premise right off the bat. That was a big part of what got me interested when they announced this game, because it's just a really interesting idea, and it makes you want to know, oh, is this our world? Is it another world? Like, what's going on? Where did the paintress come from? Is she really evil? Is she killing people? Is she sending them to another dimension? What's going on, you know? That's the sort of story I like in a game. A simple one, but one that gets you thinking a lot, which you may be aware of if you've seen any of my Dark Souls videos. This is where I'll make another comparison with Persona. I have virtually no interest in the cast, or the setting, or the plot of that game. It was not interesting to me. I get why people like it. High school kids doing high school things in school, just no thanks. I prefer games with a fantastical setting. If you like that school stuff, that's great. I've been to high school, I lived that life. I didn't get to shoot myself in the head and summon a persona. That would have been pretty cool. Sure, at times it's nice to have that nostalgic feeling of, you know, hanging out after school with your friends and then going into a dungeon and grinding EXP. But overall, I want a setting that is something different and that I want to explore. The characters likewise. And how overall this cast will hold up against JRPG classics, well, that remains to be seen in the long term, but for the most part, I'm down with it. What are the JRPG classics for teams? Final Fantasy VI is probably one that gets brought up a lot, I suppose. Maybe Chrono Trigger? Give me some Breath of Fire 3 and 4 though. Incidentally, very quick aside, Breath of Fire 4 has been semi-restored and re-released on GOG. Go check that out, it's a great game. The world of E33 though it's beautiful. It feels like a painting come alive, a fantasy world, full of creatures and colourful sights. There's a world map of sorts that you can venture around into little areas, which are relatively linear, but with branching paths that lead to treasure, secrets, and things like that. You can walk, climb, jump, grapple, and so on. The areas are lovely to behold, and the design of them feels decent. They're not too long, they're not too short, just the right amount of bosses and mini-bosses sprinkled in. Just when you feel like an area should be done, it usually is. Outside of all that though, E33 has nice extras. Hairstyles, costumes, and just little things like they don't feel like they need to be there, but they are, and they help flesh out the experience. Feels almost weird to have them, because I'm so used to games being like, oh, buy the $3 hair DLC, you know? Feels like a content-rich game, and on that note, it costs less than other games too. More content, less price. Isn't that what you love to see? How about performance and all that? Well, I've got the game on high for most of the settings, with one or two bumped up to ultra, like for textures maybe. That's on a 4070 Ti running 1440p at DLSS quality. For the most part, it maintains a 60 FPS lock. If I swap it to DLAA, it does dip a bit. By and large though, performance has been fine, no crashes so far. Hard to speak a lot more about this game without going into spoilers. Maybe I'll do like another video later on, you know, more specifically about the story and all. All I really wanted to say in this video is the following. This is a new franchise from a new studio, and it's great. It doesn't feel like a low budget game, you know? Sometimes you buy like a cheaper game and it feels kind of low budget, and you know, it's not anything bad. Like Fate Samurai Remnant, that game feels pretty low budget. I like that game a lot, but you can feel it. This game, it feels high budget. I don't know what the budget actually is, I'm assuming it's pretty good, but it feels there, and the price is good. A studio's first game potentially becoming Game of the Year, that's really nice too. Again, I'm not saying this game's going to win Game of the Year, but it's probably going to be in the contenders. And it's nice to see something positive in the game industry for a change, from a new studio, new IP, and they're doing well. Whatever the case, the game has been a success, and I'm enjoying it a lot, and I give it my wholehearted recommendation. So, that's all I have to say. Thanks so much for watching, catch you soon.